The lecture hall of the Intergalactic Academy buzzed with voices in a dozen languages. Students from across the stars filled the seats, their iridescent eyes, feathered crests, and shimmering scales marking the vast diversity of the galaxy. Today's topic was whispered about long before the class began. At the front of the hall, Professor Tkar adjusted his breathing mask and tapped his claw against the lectern. His wings twitched, betraying unease. "Today," he rasped, "we discuss the youngest of the Terrans, human children." A nervous ripple spread through the class. The galaxy knew humans were difficult, but their children, that was something of myth. Vril, a crystalline student whose body refracted light in prismatic hues, raised a limb. "Professor, surely the stories are exaggerated? No youngling could be more dangerous than a trained adult." Professor Tkar's throat sac inflated and deflated in a sigh. "That is what we once believed. Until the incident at the Academy of Novan Prime. The lecture lights dimmed, and a hologram flickered to life. Grainy footage of a human child, no taller than Atselian's knee, clad in bright clothing with cartoon animals on the chest. The child was grinning. "This," Tkar continued grimly, "is known as Emily." The alien students leaned forward. In Novan Prime's cultural exchange, humans insisted on including one of their offspring. We expected fragility, timidity. Instead, the footage shifted. Emily stood in the Academy's garden, surrounded by towering alien flora. Several Novan younglings watched curiously as she climbed a tree, barehanded, barefoot. She slipped once, dangled, then laughed before scrambling higher. "She is falling," gasped Larar, a student with translucent skin. But Emily did not fall. She leapt from one branch to another, caught it by her fingertips, swung, and landed with a triumphant shout. The hologram froze on her smiling face. "Observe," said Tkar. "The human response to mortal peril." Laughter. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the hall. Another scene played, Emily chasing Novan hatchlings in a game of tag. The Novans were fast, but Emily was faster. Darting, tripping, rolling, and popping back up with scraped knees. Blood smeared her shin, yet she ignored it, determined to win. "She is injured," Vril whispered. "Yes," said the professor. "And she calls this fun," gasps echoed. Most species treated even minor injuries as emergencies. Yet this human child treated pain as entertainment. The next footage drew even more horror. In a sterile lab, Novan instructors introduced simple puzzles. Blocks of varying shapes, intended to test coordination. While other species carefully placed them, Emily stacked them into a crude tower, then deliberately knocked it down, laughing. "She destroys her own work?" one student cried. "Not destroys," corrected Tkar. "She tests limits. To humans, failure is not shameful. It is experimentation." The hall fell silent. For species that revered perfection, the concept was alien. But the real fear came with the final recording. The hologram showed Emily on the Academy's training field, watching a group of Novan Guardians practicing combat drills with padded staves. She tilted her head, then approached. One Guardian, humoring her, handed over a practice stick. Emily gripped it in her tiny hands. She swung clumsily at first, then harder, faster. With every strike, her stance improved. Within minutes, she was mimicking the drills, her body absorbing movements like a sponge. When a Guardian tried to spar gently with her, she ducked under his strike, tapped him in the leg, and giggled. The audience of alien students gasped. "She learns." Instantly, Alara whispered. "And she enjoys combat," Vril added. Professor Tkar let the silence linger. "Now you understand. Humans are not feared merely for their strength, nor their weapons. It is their young that terrify us. They are reckless, curious, resilient. What injures them becomes a game. What defeats them becomes a lesson. And what frightens them." The hologram froze on Emily's face again. Eyes bright, smile unshaken. "Often becomes their next adventure." The class was silent. None could imagine their own offspring acting so. Vril remembered how his people's children were kept in padded chambers until maturity, shielded from harm. LRR recalled how her kind remained in nutrient sacks for years, never exposed to danger. Compared to that, humans allowed their children to run wild, to climb, to fall, to bleed, and called it play. A student from the back finally spoke. "Professor, if this is childhood, what does an adult become?" Karas' wings folded tight. His gaze swept the hall. "That," he said darkly, "is why humanity is feared. By the time they are grown, they have survived 1,000 trials, each one that would cripple another species. Their children are forged by chaos. Their adults are tempered by it." The room filled with uneasy silence. Some students scribbled frantic notes, others stared blankly, trying to comprehend a species that turned danger into playthings. The lecture ended, but whispers followed the students into the corridors. They laugh at pain. They play with danger. They fail on purpose. And they rise again. In the shadows of the academy, a recording of the lecture was already spreading across the galactic networks. On distant worlds, governments and military leaders watched with unease as the truth spread. Human children were not fragile. They were a warning, and somewhere on Earth Emily, oblivious to her reputation, was climbing yet another tree, scraping her knees, laughing and preparing unknowingly to terrify the galaxy.